Enthusiastic. Try again. Morning. That's better. I've got a great team developing our kids program, and it is now that time for the Energy Kids to head off to Energy Kids. So thank you to our Energy Kids leaders and the parents, and particularly to everybody involved in putting the program together. Our church family, what I love about our church family is we're in this journey together. And Harm's just asked for a moment just to be able to chat to us as a church family. So, yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Microphone's working, I guess.
Yeah.
As reluctant as I normally am to get up to speak about anything, thanks, David. I feel this is appropriate to say a few words. Matthew's with us today.
Yeah.
Stand up, Matthew.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, I guess everybody knows. A few weeks ago, someone messed with his brain for several hours. But he's doing all right now, and I don't know how many of you have experienced this sort of thing, but when you're sitting in hospital in intensive care next to your son in the middle of the night, when there's not a lot going on, you feel the prayers of the people around you, and you feel the prayers in a very real way. And I certainly did. The whole experience, both this time and last time, has had an effect on me. I used to have very good control of my emotions. I don't anymore. So I want to thank you all for the prayers, and people all over the world have been praying. I don't know about you, but I personally am a reluctant prayer. I don't feel like I have many words, and I really worry about saying something inappropriate. And I guess other people feel that way as well, but I've developed a sense that having felt the prayers in such a real way, that if you're not actually praying, then maybe you're not pulling your weight. And there's a few words that I'd like to read from the Bible, but because I get stressed about getting up and talking, I've forgotten to bring my Bible up here. So, Daniela, I think the Bible's lying next to you on a chair, is that, or Matthew? All right, can you bring it up here? I know you've got a Bible here, but I've got a better one.
Okay. Yeah, but...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. That's what I managed to catch that. I'll give this one back to Dan while we oh, yeah, great. Yes.
I don't want to take too much of your time, but there's... And you think I would have looked it up beforehand, but hey, it's got all sorts of groovy things, this Bible. Matthew...
You're losing all the good bits.
I'm losing all the good bits. So I should have been more prepared. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Corinthians. There you go, I've got the thing in there. So yeah, as I said, I'm a reluctant prayer. I worry about saying the right thing, and I guess others are like that too. Because I just don't seem to have the right words. But I'm going to read something from 1 Corinthians 2. And I, brethren, when I came to you, came not with excellency of speech or of wisdom, declaring you the testimony of God. For I determined to not know anything among you except for Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in trembling, and my speech and my preaching was not the enticing words of man's wisdom, but in the demonstration of the Spirit and of its power, that your faith should not stand on the wisdom of man, but on the power of God. Again, we thank you for our prayers. We are happy in the knowledge and faithful and certain in the knowledge that God has plans for all of us, and also for Matthew. But as it is written, as it is written, eye hath not seen, hath, because I'm reading from the King James Version,
Would you like a real Bible?
which,
Sorry.
which I think is the best version, which I think is not the most accurate version, which I think is not the most easy to read version, but I think it is the most beautiful version. But it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for them that love him. I think he's got a plan for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah. Aren't you grateful to be on this journey as part of a family? As we've been saying over and over again, this is not a solo game. Christianity was never meant to be a solo game, and it has been lovely to see the way the church family have come together in prayer. And we know, let's be honest, we know as a church family, God is inviting us to take prayer more seriously than we currently do. We are wanting to step more into his heart through prayer, and we're learning. We've got a way to go in learning that. But part of what he's doing, I think it's interesting, as Gene in Lena Valley and Matt going through what he's going through here, has forced us as we come together and say, like, God, we don't have the answers. We know you do, and there's something about being together in prayer that is important, and I think is part of what God's calling us to as a church family. So I pray that you hear the heart of what Harm's trying to say. Prayer isn't something you get right. It's about a relationship that Jesus is inviting us individually and as a church family into, in my view. So I might just pray as we head into the final sermon of this series, as we looked at the 6 radical decisions. We'll tell you more about that in just a minute. But Jesus, as we come, we just want to say thanks that Matt's here amongst us. It is so nice to see his smiling face. And thank you for the Kniba family and the part that they play in our church family. We also want to keep bringing Jean to you and the very special part she has amongst us as she so faithfully serves at Lena Valley, but also has this heart just to care deeply for her family and friends, and the way she is trusting you on the journey of wrestling with cancer herself. And Jesus, just as a side note, I want to say thanks for the way that you are calling us as a church family into prayer. Help us hear that. Help us do it. Help us, like Harm is saying, help us not just to think, oh, okay, we've got to find the right way of doing it. Just help us learn that you are calling us into relationship. And so, Jesus, I pray that heart, even as this morning we come to open your word together, I pray that you help us hear your heart in it all. Because we know we can't do it any other way. In your name, Jesus. Amen. And again, it is nice to welcome the crew from Lena Valley who are with us. I believe all systems go. My glasses are a bit foggy. It's really... the lights sort of come off in a bit of an annoying way. But is the crew from Lena Valley with us? Be good to see if we can just see. Okay, well, maybe not. That's okay. Oh, there they are. Hey guys, good to see you this morning. You're looking particularly attractive this morning, I've got to say. So it's nice to have you with us. And this is the part of the journey for us as a church family with all this technology stuff, is that we are one church in 2 locations. And next week we will be really testing the boundaries of what we can do with technology, because we're going to try and do a combined service, a combined family service in both places at the same time, held together by technology, which is always a scary thing to do. But we've got at least a couple of people who are wanting to step in, make a public commitment through baptism. We've got at least one family who are wanting to dedicate a very special little baby. And we have a number of people, about half a dozen people, who are wanting to step into membership of the church family. If you're at this point, you're hearing my words and thinking, gee, I have a sense that God's asking me to do one of those things, please come and chat to either one of the elders or to Dan or I today. It's still not too late. We'd love you to be part of our special family service next week. Just to communicate too, just before I dive into the body of the sermon, as I said last week, that we as a church eldership, we're praying through this whole technology thing, the video streaming thing, and we had this sense that Jesus was saying, just relax about all the money stuff. Don't worry, I've got it covered. We weren't exactly sure what he meant by that. I would have preferred him say, look, this is how I've got it covered, or this is your plan A, B, C. But this is the sense, because it is a big deal for us. But our sense was that it's not right to put on a fundraising campaign, but also to say, if you sense that God is asking you to contribute towards the video thing, this is about as hard, then feel free to do it. It's kind of that's our hard pitch, We would love your fellowship in that if that's what you sense God is doing, but only if you sense that's what God's asking you to do. And you can either give directly through the offering and mark it for that, or to give through the bank thing, and you just mark it on the thingamajigger. And Agnes will work out what you mean, if you know what I mean. So that's what we do. Our sense is we're to move forward, but that somehow Jesus is going to sort out the finances. So as a church family, it's a bit of a step of faith, and we're trying to work out what all that means. We come to the end now of our series on the 6 radical decisions. Now, I wrote the book, The 6 Radical Decisions, in 2012 as I was coming out of of 20 years working with Fusion, the Christian mission organisation, and it was a mob that started back in 1960. My dad actually started it. And I learnt a lot from my dad. I'm pretty proud of my dad. One of the things I learned was about commitment. At the age of about 18, he just started praying, Jesus, I want all the teenagers in Australia to know you like I know you. That's and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to see that happen. And he actually prayed that same prayer every day. He went down the bush at a place called Mount Ku-ring-gai in Sydney, and would pray the same prayer every day for a couple of weeks. Just so, sort of sensing, this is what I want my life to be about. And he said it was like every day there was more of him able to pray it. To the end of the 6 weeks, it was kind of like he had this transaction with God where God said, okay, I'm going to take you up on that. And that commitment defined his life, and still defines his life. Even after the last 10 years, which have been probably the most complicated of his life, that commitment still defines his life. And I'm proud of what my dad was able to do with his life. Thousands of people came to know Jesus through him hanging on when everything in him probably wanted to give up. The sixth radical decision is simply that, is commitment. When I took this journey trying to work out, okay, what kind of church do you want to build? What are you up to? When a bunch of Christians get together, what do they look like when they're at their best? And as I wrestled with that and in my own experience and looked at church history, there were these 6 things. That's where the book came from. And the first was, and really the main one, is that Jesus is everything. People get their sense of identity and orientation and marching orders from their relationship with Jesus. And as they do that, like my dad did, they discover that Jesus actually has a plan for their lives. That's the second one, whenever the church has been at its best, people have been discovering that they are unique and they are uniquely called. There has been a heresy sort of implicit in the church that your main job would be to turn up at church on a Sunday morning and give money into the offering. Nah, that's not a Christian view of what it means to be a Christian. Your main job is to be you, to be all that God prepared in advance for you to do. There is a particular calling on your life, and your task is to take Jesus' hand and to step into that mission with him. As you do that, you'll find the third radical decision, you can't do it alone. We need each other. We really need fellowship. Not just like a superficial bounce off, like billiard balls bouncing off each other off a table. We really need fellowship. And I think we in the Western Church are having to relearn what it means to actually have fellowship, to be with each other. And then as you find fellowship, you start to want other people to experience what you're experiencing, and you welcome people into your lives. Whenever the church has been at its best, it's been hospitable. And then as we start to invite other people into our lives, we discover that the main game, we're not the main game. The main game, as we talked about last week, was what does it mean to build platforms for others? That's why I showed you the photo of Dad last week, because one of the things I am most proud about what he achieved with his life is not so much what he achieved with his life, but what the platforms he laid for people all over the world to find the story that God had for them. Whenever you see the kingdom breaking out, it's not that this is one superstar in the middle of it. Everybody is finding their story. But none of what I'm saying in this is news, is it? Like, you know all this. One of the things that I realised as I was writing the book is that the first 5 radical decisions become powerful through the 6th. It's commitment. It is the choice to hang on. And this is countercultural. Australian social researcher Hugh Mackay says of this emerging generation that they're growing up in a world of ever-expanding choices, and they've made a virtue of keeping their options open. They've adopted a "what else is there" as their general catch cry. It's a question that comes up whether the topic is a course of study, a job, a sexual partner, a musical genre, an outing, a set of religious or political beliefs, a fashion label, a food fad, or a make of car. That one of the greatest sins in our society you can make is to reduce your options. But commitment to anything means being willing to say no to other things. Does that make sense? That commitment means being willing to say no. At the heart of our marriage vows is this: forsaking all others as long as we both shall live. It is, I am committing to Leanne and nobody else. Committing to Jesus means not having idols in your life, not getting your sense of meaning from anywhere else. Whatever you commit to, whatever you say yes to, implicit in that is saying no to other things. And the central difference between those who have changed the world with Jesus and those that haven't is commitment. I don't know anybody who has had a significant impact for the kingdom who hasn't gone through moments where everything in them wanted to give up. yet they hang on. One of the things I learned from my dad, one of the lines he has, is, seems like grace often kicks in on the other side of the give up line, where you hang on despite the fact everything wants to give up, and then somehow grace kicks in a special way and meets you in the moment. It was another social anthropologist by the name of Margaret Mead who said, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Listen to what she says. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. It's the only thing that ever has. It's more normal to want to bounce around based on your feelings, isn't it? That's the world we live in, and kind of my feelings define my reality. But that is, as we're going to look at over the next 7 weeks, after our family service next week, we're going to spend then 6 weeks engaging with Ephesians chapter 4. Just that one chapter we're going to take a deep dive into for 6 weeks. And we'll discover that immaturity is defined by the Apostle Paul as someone who bounces around in life like a cork on a wave rather than being grounded in life. There is a temptation to pretend people who change the world are somehow more than human. It's safer that way because it asks less of us. They weren't. They were simply committed. And so, what does that mean? Well, as you start to realise this is what Jesus is calling us to, we start to realise the Bible talks about this over and over again in a really frank kind of way. The first commitment, the first decision to follow Jesus is really about what does it mean to be committed to your relationship with Jesus? Jesus himself says, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Now, that is something that's really confronting for us Westerners to hear, but it's hard to describe how countercultural it was for a Jewish man to say, you need to love me more than you love your parents. Because the whole of Jewish society was based around the family unit. And Jesus says, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it. And whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. You'll find this is a verse that pops up, this idea that you can, if you like, grasp after your own life, feel free. But you know, don't you, every time in your life when you've done that, it hasn't left you feeling more whole and happy. When you make you the center of the universe, it leads to fragmentation. It ultimately leads to death. But Jesus says, if you're willing to give up your life for my sake, if you're willing to live your life centered around me, that's actually the path to life. He's inviting us not to an emotional experience, but to a commitment. What does it mean? This central question of being an apprentice of Jesus is, what does it mean to actually live our lives for him? To actually do that. What does it mean to live with him at the center of our lives? Well, two things. It means doing more than turning up at church on a Sunday morning. It means creating space in your calendar, in your daily routine, to create time with Jesus. Like if you are not actually spending time with Jesus on a daily basis, I would encourage you, you'll find life a lot better when you do, when you actually create space for him in your life. And it's more than that. I know for me, and it's a journey, because there are two sides of us, but I know for me, I want to do more than just create space for him once a day. I want to find a way to continually be reminded that he is the centre and I'm not. That's why I've actually set a little beeper on my phone, and it goes off every half hour. And the intent of that is to help me, it just goes buzz in my pocket. And I know if it's just a single buzz, it's the timer. If it's a multiple buzz, it's someone trying to ring me. But that is a way for me just to try and remember, okay, Jesus, what are you doing at the moment? And I love, for us as an eldership, you need to understand, we are starting this journey of trying not to make decisions without saying, Jesus, what are you saying? We are wanting to actually allow Jesus to be the head of this church, practically. And I want to encourage you, what does it mean for you to do that with your life? To be committed and say, Jesus, I don't want to make major decisions in my life without you bring you into those decisions. What does it mean to actually be committed to Jesus? Similarly, I think one of the things I admired most about my dad is that he was absolutely committed to the mission that Jesus gave him. And commitment to the mission that you have is not a superficial thing. One of my favourite verses is Hebrews, it's a little passage, Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. And there's this picture. Since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Have there been people who are special to you, who have been on the journey and who aren't with us anymore? I know there are plenty for me. There's a guy by the name of Bob who was just such a mentor for me, and he's not with us anymore. And I imagine Bob there as one of the great cloud of witnesses. My granddad, my Pa, I know he's there. There's this sense in which there is a great grandstand and there's a whole lot of people cheering us on. And since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance. One of the things I wrote, little lines in my book, The 6 Radical Decisions, is all of us want to change the world, but most of us want to do it by lunchtime. And if we can't do it by lunchtime, it gets too tough. What the writer of Hebrews here is saying, it's going to take perseverance. Let us run with perseverance what? The race marked out for you. There is a race marked out for you. I don't know what it is. I know that there's a race marked out for me, and I would love Jesus to tell me where it's going to be in 10 years, or would I? I don't know. But I don't know where it's going to be, where my race is going to be in 10 years, but I do have a sense of what he's asking of me now, today. And I know the same, if you're honest and open, there will be something he's asking of you in this moment. And your task is to step into the race he has marked out for you. That is what it means to be actually committed to the mission that he has for you. Commitment to fellowship, what does that actually look like? Well, this is how we know what love is. Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. Commitment to fellowship means putting the people that God has you travelling this journey with, i.e., just have if you're not sure who that is, I'd like you to just have a look around. Look around the room now. Actually do it. But look around. Look around the room. Them, that's who I'm talking about. They're the people Jesus has us walking this journey with. He says in this passage, being willing to put them ahead of yourself. In fact, being willing to die for them. Being willing to step into relationship with them and be committed to them. What does that mean in practice? Well, it means at least a couple of things. It means spending more time with them than a couple of seconds at the end of a Sunday service. Actually, commitment to relationships take time. As we've already said, that sociologically they can demonstrate that the magic number is 7 minutes. You can sustain a superficial conversation for 7 minutes. But if you keep a conversation going beyond 7 minutes, you'll start to know something about the other person and they'll start to know something about you. I want to challenge you. Have at least one 7-minute conversation with a brother or sister in Christ this week and next week and next week. And you will find you are on the journey towards fellowship. The other one is we've got life groups and other structures that are important. I love, one of the things I just realised this weekend about our church here. We are fairly unique in that we are a church that is run by teams. I counted 21 different teams as I was trying to work out, as I was looking at our church family. From the team that run our time out to the eldership team, to the team that run our kids program, to the finance team. We've got a pastoral team, a bunch of people that come together to talk and care about how do we care for people. We've got a team that run the men's shed. We've got 21 different teams. There's something about a team is different from just fellowship because we're working together towards an end. I encourage you, find yourself on a team. Either here in your church or out there in the world, but whatever, find a team that is working together with other brothers and sisters in Christ for the sake of the kingdom. So I've talked a little bit about C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien. I reckon they became a team. A team working about what does it mean to live your faith in the world of literature. So the other thing I need to say about hospitality or about fellowship is that without fail, there are 3 phases to every relationship. And depending on how intense the first phase is, will depend on how intense the second phase. The first one is, generally speaking, when you meet people for the first time, you are inclined to be enchanted with them. You're inclined, or any group of people, what we know is people who come to our church for the first time tend to, if they are predisposed to want to find it, they'll tend to be a little enchanted. And say, isn't this wonderful? I also know, because you're getting to know me, they talk about a honeymoon phase for new pastors. I hope the honeymoon phase isn't too intense, because what I know is what comes next is disenchantment. And the level of the enchantment in the first phase, where you think someone can't do any wrong, is directly commensurate to the level of the disenchantment that comes next. And that's where you think someone can't do anything right. And then, hopefully, if you can hang on in any relationship beyond those 2 phases, you can then move to reality. And the reality is, this church isn't perfect. No life group is perfect. None of the people here are perfect. But we're all on a journey together. And fellowship, real fellowship takes commitment. And as we said, as Hugh Mackay said, commitment isn't normal. Another commitment is the commitment to hospitality, to welcome people into the mess of your life and to allow yourself to engage with the mess of their life. There is a neat and tidy kind of version of hospitality that says, I will only invite people into the bits of my life that are neat and tidy. Well, that's actually not hospitality. That's something else. That's putting on a show. Jesus said, and there's this interesting, the one time where he talks about sending people, the sheep and the goats. And he says, it's going to be like this, folks. There's going to be over here the sheep and over here the goats. And And he's going to say to the sheep, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance. The kingdom is prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit." For Jesus, it seems as though the making space for the people with the messiest lives is a direct measure of how seriously we're taking our relationship with Him. Isn't it challenging? If our church family is going to do anything worthwhile, it's going to be because we are not waiting till we have it all together. If we're waiting till we have it all together, we're waiting forever. But we are stepping into and engaging really with the lives of people that are broken and hurting. And as we do, we'll also discover that there are parts of us that are broken and hurting too, if we're to be honest. That's what hospitality is actually about. And it requires commitment. It requires commitment. And the final commitment is just the empowerment we talked about last week requires commitment. It is normal to want to organise your day around your own ego, but it's interesting seeing the Apostle Paul write to Timothy this commitment to empowering others. He says, "You then, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." What's he saying? He's saying, don't get so bent out of shape about how you're coming across and what people think of you. Think about the people you're engaging with and how you can free them to help then free others. As I said last week, one of the things my dad used to say is, it's not what you do with your life, but what you set in motion that counts. It's not what you do with your life, but what you set in motion that counts. And another famous guy, I can't remember his name, said, anything worth doing takes more than one lifetime. Anything worth doing takes more than one lifetime. We tend to see the universe as though we're the centre of it. And for us, we have to make a conscious choice to live from a perspective of building platforms from others. And that requires a commitment. So these 6 radical decisions find their heart and strength in our commitment. And I wish I could tell you commitment was easy. I wish I could tell you it's going to be straightforward. But as I said, I have just never met anybody who has been able to be used by God and hasn't had a moment like Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane. We will all have moments like Jesus did at Gethsemane where our commitment is tested. Can you imagine what it would be for the Son of God to say this? He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, James and John, along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. There is a heresy in some wings of the Christian church that says, like, if you've got enough faith and everything's going the way you want it to, then you will never then life will go the way you want it to. It's called a prosperity gospel, and I think it's evil, actually. Here, the founder of our faith hits a moment where he is sorrowful and troubled. And all of us, like Psalm 23 says, he leads me on right paths, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. There are going to be times where you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And Jesus says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrows to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me, saying, guys, I need your fellowship in this moment. And then going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." He's saying, "Oh God, I don't think I can do this. I don't know if I want to do this. Please, don't make me do this." Do you ever identify with that? But not my will, but yours be done. This is how the world changes. Not with clever people or, good-looking people, although I think we're both, but with people who are committed. People who have the courage to say, when everything in them is screaming to say, "Please, I want an easier way," when everything in them is saying, "I don't want to do this," to look Jesus in the eyes and say, "Not my will, but yours be done." This is what it means to be an apprentice of Jesus Christ. So as a church family, what does this mean for us? Well, we want to be people who live the 6 radical decisions, not just talk about them. This is what someone who lives these 6 radical decisions will look like. This is the kind of vision. If you want to hang around with us, you got to know this is the kind of bunch of people we want to be. We want our relationship with Jesus to be our main anchor point and the source of our motivation. Someone who lives the 6 radical decisions, that's our main source of orientation is Jesus. We know that's the journey. We want to become that. We know we're not there yet, but we know we're on a journey to become people like that. We also want to be people whose mission is that we know the mission that we have and that we are working towards that mission every day of our life, or at least most days of our lives. Sometimes that mission will be hugely significant in the world's eyes. Sometimes the world won't even notice. But in every case, the world will be changing. Because we are being faithful to the story that Jesus has for us. One of the other characteristics of somebody who is living the 6 radical decisions is that they value fellowship deeply, and they'll be able to tell you about the people whose friendship has helped them hang on, has helped them stay the course. Another thing is that they are open and welcoming of new people and are fascinated by how different we all are. They'll usually be able to tell you stories of fascinating people they've met, and many of them will not be the people that society regards as rich and famous. Someone who's living the 6 radical decisions has a life full of amazing stories of people who are amazing, rather than has a life full of themselves. Does that make sense? Someone who's living the 6 radical decisions will be genuinely excited when other people, other churches, make real gains for the kingdom of God, and will tell you about those they've been able to help along the way with a sense of pride and not jealousy. They'll be excited when other people win, is one of the signs of someone who's living the 6 radical decisions. And another sign that someone's living the 6 radical decisions is that they will readily recount numerous times where they came close to giving up, but their commitment meant they held on. If you want to hang around with us at Citywide Baptist Church, these are the kinds of people we want to become. We know we're on a journey. We don't have all the answers. But it's a journey that's worth taking, don't you reckon? That's why we want to celebrate next week with our family service. Baptism is a huge deal. What someone is literally saying with the act of baptism is, my life is no longer my own. I want to live for Jesus. We've got at least 2 people being baptised next week. With church membership, what they're saying is, I believe God's asking me to commit to this mob. I'm in. And I believe God's calling me to share the responsibility of working out with Him how we do this. So we'll be welcoming at least half a dozen people into church membership, which is fantastic. And with child dedication, what is happening is someone is saying, in this case, at least Steve and Jess, but if you also want to dedicate your child, feel free. We want to be the kind of house where this child experiences a house built on the love of God and has all the real opportunity to respond to Jesus for themselves. We want to be an as for me and my household kind of house. Is kind of what we're saying with child dedication. There's nothing magical to it. It's a commitment. And you better believe it's a commitment of our church family to say, we are going to be with you in that. It's not just a commitment of the parents, it's a commitment of the church family. So next week, come ready. This is not just about, it's not going to be a spectator thing. Isn't it wonderful what they're doing? No, for those who are dedicating their children, for those who are being baptised, there is a reciprocal thing that will happen next Sunday. And it's about commitment. Like I've said before, I wish I could tell you all this was complicated. I really do. Because if it was complicated, we'd have an excuse. But it's not. Isn't it true? Nothing I have said this morning is news. You know, I wish I was cleverer to be saying smarter stuff. But the truth is, the gospel isn't complicated. It just asks this question. Are you willing? Are you willing to make Jesus the centre of your life? And stop trying to be the centre of your life yourself. Are you willing to commit to Jesus, to the mission He has for you, to fellowship, to hospitality, to empowerment? And ultimately, are you willing to hang on when everything in you wants to give up? Let's just pray, and we'll invite the band up. Ah, Jesus, you know us. You know that there is part of us that can really identify you with when you said, Father, I don't want to do this. We can identify with that because there's part of us that says, we don't want to do it. But Jesus, to the best of our ability, we want to say, not my will, but yours be done. We want to step into the life you have for us and stop mucking around in mud pies of our own making. We want to be free to really be your apprentices. So Jesus, as a church family, as we get ready to celebrate next week with our family service, as we continue this journey of wrestling with your vision for your church, can you help us take your heart seriously? And for each one of us, each one of my brothers and sisters here, Jesus, help us make the choices you are inviting us to make so that we can step into the whole life you have for us. In your name, amen.